Hi, everybody. My main lecture presentation turned out to be a little bit short, so there was a few minutes remaining for me to speak. So I decided to make a little bit of an introduction video just to sort of talk about myself and my own background. Um, yeah, so basically I came from a musical background. My mom is a professional classical musician, and my father is a jazz musician. He wasn't professional, but he was a very good musician. So they obviously both influenced me a little bit. Parents usually do. So I started playing music at the age of 6 with the cello. My mom wanted me to be a great cello player. It didn't quite work out. I gave it up after about 6 months. Couldn't take it. So it was like about 6 years later, when I was 12, that I discovered the guitar, and that's when I really got excited about music with the guitar, rock and roll, and of course I jumped right in Led Zeppelin, all that stuff. You couldn't keep me away from that guitar, and I studied, had teachers, rock, jazz, blues, and began composing actually original music right away, and had my little groups, teenage groups, and playing gigs and concerts and dances and stuff like that. And it kind of culminated around the early 80s. The kind of the rock and the blues-based rock music kind of went out of fashion. So the only way to get in a band at that time was to play like punk, kind of, which I was totally against punk, but eventually I broke down and joined a punk band. And we ended up going to London, England, for spending half a year in London, and that, yeah, it didn't quite work out that well, but it was quite an experience to be in London in 1985 with all the punks and stuff. Then I came back to Canada, and I really needed to earn some money, so I started playing in the bars. I started just doing the bar circuit just to earn quick money, and doing that. Yeah. Also in those years from London, I also ended up traveling in 1986 to Turkey for a short visit to Turkey, but that really opened my eyes there. Just seeing the instruments. I didn't play anything there, but seeing the instruments and the culture, and it was mind blowing, really. Like Istanbul in 1986. Anyways, I went back to Canada and just started playing in the bars because I needed to earn money, and played, and that was pretty heavy, pretty heavy time, because I'm a musician's musician. I'm not like a entertainer. That wasn't really my calling in life. So after building up my finances for a couple of years of doing that, I just went to India. I said, I gotta get out of here. So I went to India and started learning sitar, actually. And I got so much into the sitar that I, consequently, over the next 10 years, was in India for 6 months studying sitar, and then back to Canada playing in the bars for 6 months to earn the money to get back to India again. So 10 years of doing this and studying sitar. And I fell in love with the music of a sitarist named Buddhaditya Mukherjee. And long story short, I actually ended up having the chance to, I just dreamt about studying with him, but I actually ended up becoming his first private student. He didn't teach before. I actually had to, long story, but had to squeak my way in somehow, and it was great because he accepted me as a student. I met him in Italy, so he was giving seminars in Italy. So through that connection to Italy, I started to go to Italy after that and play sitar concerts, actually. And through learning from Buddhaditya, he was talking a lot about how the ideal sound of a sitar, you had to have certain parts of the sitar had to resonate at certain frequencies. So I asked him, well, why don't you take a cheap sitar and do that? And he goes, well, I'm not sure how. And so, well, maybe I'll do that. So what I ended up doing was taking sitars, cheap sitars at first, and cutting them open and tuning like the soundboard and the different parts of the sitar to according to what he taught me, the frequencies of those parts and putting them back together, and it really improved the doing this really improved the sound of the sitar. So I ended up doing that to 10 or 15 sitars over the years, like just taking them apart. And this sort of was the beginning of getting me into building instruments, right? So in the early 90s, I was playing a lot of concerts, sitar concerts in Italy, and also started to teach. And we were teaching in Italian conservatories. In fact, one of my Italian tabla player partners there, Fabio Lazzarian, and I were actually the first musicians in history to ever be granted the permission to teach Indian music in an Italian conservatory. So that was wow, you know. But so we were doing some pretty breakthrough stuff back in the mid '90s, 25 years ago. Concerts in like we played in these huge cathedrals. Actually, like they were. I didn't do any of this organizing, but Fabio and some of these people there, they were going to these huge cathedrals and like convincing the priests to allow Indian music, sitar music to be performed there, and it was quite a wonderful time, really. During that time, I also discovered the oud. And the first time I ever heard the oud in Arabic music was just floored me. I thought, this is incredible music. And so I didn't quite jump in and start studying that immediately because I didn't want to water down, I didn't want to dilute what I was doing with the sitar. So I held that off for a while, but finally I couldn't take it anymore. I went to Morocco and started learning the oud. I got an oud and started learning the oud in Morocco. Then, where are we now? I also wanted to I wanted to do something with a fretless guitar, okay, like a guitar without fret, bez prashtsava kitara, right? I wanted to do that. So in 1997, while in India, I was in Rishikesh and I bought some tools and a cheap sitar and modified that guitar into a fretless guitar. Steel string fretless guitar, not a nylon string fretless guitar. So the steel string fretless guitar, like with the steel strings on the fretless, you have to use your fingernails, which is very similar to how a sarod is played, right? Like a sarod, like there's a sitar and sarod. Sarod is the not so famous as sitar, but it's another Indian instrument. It's like a fretless guitar. So I created this fretless guitar, and I was playing it really more like a sarod. That was kind of my way into the sarod, if you know what I mean. So at that time, I really was playing three instruments: this fretless guitar, sarod kind of thing, oud, and sitar. And in India, again, at the end of that trip, where I was there for a full year, actually, up in Ladakh, Tibet, basically, I met a Czech girl, and at that time, I kind of. I kind of had enough of India, actually, being in India, and I really wanted to move to Europe and start living there and playing concerts. And this little romance with this Czech girl, and we ended up moving to Prague, actually. And I kind of ended up staying there. That was 1998, and I ended up staying there in Czech since that time, on and off. I mean, I haven't stayed there continuously. Yeah, so... Yeah, I moved to Prague, and that was amazing, and that was a very special time at the end of the 90s in Prague. There was a real interest in world music, which has very much died down, unfortunately. But right at that time, it was like a big deal. Everyone was like, "Wow, sitar and world music, ethno." It was really happening there, and so I had a great time. Played a lot of concerts and collaborated with Ivo Sedlacek, and I was still going to Italy, and that was a really cool time. Long story, I actually moved to Vienna for a year to live there, to collaborate with some musicians, and then after that, I had an opportunity to go to I actually went down to live on Crete at Ross Daly's school there. Ross Daly, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a big, he's a long story. Ross Daly, you check him out. Ross, Daly. He's got a school of modal music called the Labyrinth Workshop on Crete, in Houdeitsi on Crete. And we went down there, my partner and I, on our kind of honeymoon. This is the second Czech girlfriend, partner I had. And on kind of our honeymoon, we went down there and stayed for 3 months in Ross Daly's center there. We stayed there. And I went back a couple of years later for 2 months. So I was there for 5 months. And it's an amazing, like we were there right at the beginning, right when he first opened it. And he has the Labyrinth, the museum there with a couple of hundred ethnic instruments, you know, because he's traveled all like. Really check out Ross Daly. He was a huge inspiration for me for like world music, right, and how to combine music from different cultures. So he's a bit of my kind of mentor in that area, and he really opened my eyes to the difference between the Turkish maqam music and Arabic maqam music, the Arabic and the Turkish and the Persian. And so I woke up to that, and that I realized I really got to get to Istanbul and to learn the Turkish system. So what I did is I applied for a Canada Council grant and got a grant. I got the grant to go study oud in Istanbul. So in 1996-97, I went there to study oud with Necati Çelik, great oud player, and I stayed there for about a year. And also at Ross Daly's place, when I was there, it inspired me to design, like being there. There was nobody there for a lot of the time. I was just there in this museum, you know, with all these instruments, and people would come and go, and I was studying and picking people's brains, asking them about the maqams and everything. And it inspired me to design this rag maqam tar, this instrument that I've created, which is a combination of an oud and a sarod in one instrument. I don't have one here. I'm in Vancouver right now. I don't have one here. Well, I do. It's in the basement. Kind of doesn't matter. But on my lecture vid, I'm playing one of the rag maqam tars. So a rag maqam tar is a combination of an oud and a sarod. I designed that at Ross Daly's place. I designed version 1, and then off to Istanbul to do this Canada Council grant, and I had, too many things to explain. Ross also turned me on to an oud maker named Faruk Turuns, who is a great oud maker who builds the ouds. He tunes the soundboards to the frequencies. So this was amazing for me because I had done that with the sitar, tuning the sitars, opening them and tuning them. So here was an oud maker who was tuning the soundboards. So I got to meet this guy, right? Got to meet this guy. So I did actually correspond with him over the internet, and I built an oud according to his mathematical formulas. So when I actually went to Istanbul, I went there to Faruk's place, and I brought the version 1 of the rag maqam tar, and he kind of freaked out when he saw this. He was very amazed by this instrument. And he asked me to come and build another version of it in his workshop. So he had invited me to build another rag maqam tar. Of course I accepted, and I ended up going there every day for about 7 months. And this was an incredible experience for me. It really took my instrument building to another level. And of course, all the musicians were coming and going, and I was studying maqams and picking their brains about it. It was just a wonderful experience. So I'll just would say to anybody, you know, if you get inspired for the ethnic music or any kind of ethnic music, don't try to do it just with YouTube or sitting at home with books. Go to the country and learn in the country. I hope I can inspire you a little bit to get into this music, but go there. Of course, these days it's a little bit more difficult with all this pandemic stuff going on. A little more difficult to travel, but don't let that stop you. So I would never have learned what I learned if I had just stayed at home. So you go to the countries and meet the people, hang out with the people. Where are we now? 2007. Yeah. So after that, I started building more Rag Makam tires, and I ended up building 15 versions of it. The Farouk version at Farouk's place in Istanbul was version number 3. So after that, I continued studying oud. I went to Cairo. I wanted to, in Istanbul, I really learned the Turkish system, and I was curious more about also the Arabic system. So I went to Cairo and stayed there for about 6 months, learning that and absorbing more the Arabic, the pure Arabic, music, and started to collaborate with a great blind ney player, the flute, Mohammed Antar, who became a colleague, and we recorded. I should mention that also in Czech I started to make CDs of my own original music and stuff like that. So I've released some CDs of my own original music. And Mohammed and I made a CD also in Cairo. And not only was Mohammed a great colleague, he is really the guy who knows maqam. Yeah, so having that finally, because it was very difficult to learn the maqam theory, because it's not written down anywhere. Nobody really, trying to just learn that and figure it out was very, very difficult to, And I really struggled to just find people who could kind of explain it to me, because hardly anyone really can explain it. They just kind of learn it. It's not like even the teaching, the way it's taught in conservatories in Istanbul, it's also kind of, it's not really the real stuff. It's hard to explain, but they don't quite explain it to you, Hard to explain what I'm talking about, but it's really difficult to figure it out. It's not like just learning Western music. They've got it all there on paper. It's all like a logical system. Like the maqam is very confusing. It's if you come from a Western background, it's very weird to sort of understand what are they doing with these notes and these microtones. So anyways, with Muhammad, finally I found my source, because he knows it all. He knows really the whole thing. So that's another source I can also recommend to you. He's a friend of mine. I also put you in touch with him if you ever want to go really, really deep into maqam. There's Mohammed Antar. So, what kind of started happening since around 2012 is that through all of his instruments I started building. I never intended to be a professional builder. I was just building for myself, but slowly people started to notice the instruments I was building and starting to ask me to build instruments for them. So consequently, the last 5 or 6 years, I've actually been just overwhelmed with building instruments for people, and I haven't been playing concerts so much anymore. I would like to actually shift my professional work back into playing concerts and teaching also. But the last 5 or 6 years, I've just been building, which this is great also, So anyhow, that's basically who I am, and I'll leave it there, and I hope you enjoy the seminar on microtonalism found in Indian and Arabic music. See you then. Bye.